Hello, my name is Paul Meinrich. I am a family law attorney in Santa Ana, Orange County, California. I've been in practice for just over 37 years, and since the late 1980s, I've been specializing in doing family law cases. I've done a number of other things in my practice earlier on, but since the late 80s, focusing on family law. I am state certified by the State Bar of California as a certified specialist in family law. I'd like to use this video as an opportunity of introducing myself. I think it's important that if you hire a family law attorney, you have to have a good relationship with that attorney and get along with that person. So this is a means of introducing myself and you seeing how I am, and you can make a better decision as a result of that. I'd like to use the information I provide today with regard to the family residence as a means of doing that. The family residence is a good example of just about any property division issue that can come up in a family law case. The family residence involves that, or can involve that in some way. So it's a good example of many of the issues that we deal with in family law cases. In the family residence, the primary things that you have to do is you have to, first of all, characterize that residence, whether it's separate or community. You have to determine whether either of the parties may be entitled to any reimbursements for money that has been paid into the family residence or towards the mortgage or for improvements. You have to determine whether the community may have an interest in that property, even if that property otherwise would be the separate property of one of the spouses. So in characterizing the property, whether it's separate or community, you have to determine whether the property was owned before marriage or acquired by a gift or an inheritance after marriage, and whose title that property is in. Title is not always determinative as to whether the property is community or separate. For example, you can have a home that's in just one party's name, and it sounds like it's separate property of just that person, but it's not. The property could have been acquired totally with community property, and it'd be a community asset that needs to be divided 50-50 in a marriage. Keeping in mind that separate property is not divided 50-50, it's the property of the owner of that, in this case, the residence. A lot of things can happen with the residence, however. If you own it before marriage, you can change title during marriage, in which case you may have made a gift or a transmutation of that property to the community. The community can make payments on the mortgage on that property that was owned by the other spouse, in which case the community can acquire an interest in that residence. One of the spouses can use their separate property to make payments toward the principal on the loan or improvements on the property, in which case they may be entitled to be reimbursed for that money that they've paid if the source of that money that they used was separate money. So there's a number of things that can happen. How that property should be divided is another issue that comes up. Whether it should be sold, whether it should be kept for the benefit of, let's say, the children. It may cause the children an uproar, particularly if one of the children or all of the children have some type of a problem that may cause them to be or to need to stay where they're at. For example, on an autistic child, to uproot that child from the family home and move that child to another home may cause a disproportionate concern to that child that shouldn't happen just because the family is and the parents are getting divorced. So that needs to be taken into consideration. Whether the parties want to keep that property as an investment till later on and sell it later on is a consideration. Sometimes you can turn the family residence into a real estate investment between the parties, in which case you have to address by way of agreement or the judgment a number of different issues as to when the house is going to be sold, who's going to maintain it, what happens if someone dies, all kinds of different things that would be considered just as if the parties were investors in real property. Sometimes that's not a good idea, because generally if parties are getting divorced, you don't want that closeness between them in the future. They want to go about their lives. But it's a consideration anyway. So all of these things are exemplified by the family residence and are problems that can come up that need to be discussed. The other thing that I wanted to make a point is that what do you do with that property while the divorce is going on? Who lives there? Who makes the payments? If one of the parties makes the payments on the home, how does that impact child and spousal support? Can I kick out the other party? Can I force one of the parties to have to leave the residence? All of these issues need to be discussed as well. And the general answer, if you can kick someone out, is generally you cannot do that unless there's some domestic violence that goes on. But if there's disruption in the household and it's better if the parties live apart, that's when you need to start talking about these other issues about how the property is going to be maintained, who's going to be responsible, what if any reimbursements may be required for payments that are being made on that property and the upkeep of that property. All of these things can go into a package to try to make a settlement of the case as economical and as less painstaking as it may be if you were fighting about every single issue that comes up. So considering all of these things is an important part of a divorce case, and if you need further help with it, there's some information on the website that I have. Also, feel free to call. I will talk with you without charge for initial consultation, and I can tell you what I can do, what I cannot do, what the court may do in a particular situation, and we can discuss the evidence that you have and make a decision as to how to go forward. Thank you very much.